Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm a doula in Washoe County, Nevada, a Medicaid provider, a lactation educator, childbirth educator, and mom of 18. You can find me and connect on doulainreno.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm the host, Jennifer Campbell. Today I am with Teresa Walkerley, and we know each other. We hug each other. We see each other about once a month. So it's always a fun, unique, different situation, especially when it's someone like I see you once a month and we do hug and we chat and everything. But when I got your bullet points of this interview, it's crazy how little we really know about people that are in our lives. So jump in and share your parenting journey with us.
No, it's true. I see people all the time or on the regular, and then I do work with them, and then, I really find out, about them. And man, my parenting journey, Jen, and we just had a little brief discussion about it, look at your eyes because you're like, whoa,
Just
I did not
hold on to your seats, everybody.
I had no idea. I wasn't sure if I wanted to have kids, actually. I really, and you said that this show is not for children, so I can cuss or I can,
You can be you.
so I wasn't sure if I was going to fuck them up, to be honest. I wasn't sure because of the background that I came from. But then, I hit 30 and I was like, we need to have children. Like, this is such a good idea. There was nothing else I could think of that, everything in my world is about having children and planning it. And, all of a sudden it just kicked in. But up until that, I wasn't sure because everything I had gone through. So I will start with, the beginning, why I wasn't sure I wanted to have kids. And you read a little bit of this in my bio and just, discovered it today. The first time I ever did a drug, I was 5 years old, pot. I relied on pot for a long time. And I did a plethora of other drugs and experimenting through my teens, up until early 20s. And I come from a blanket of abuse. My dad tried to molest me when I was 11, and I'm sure he would have raped me. It's in our family. And, a lot of families that happens, the statistics are like 1 in 3 women, and then those are the ones that tell. And then at 12, my mom was 14 when she had my older sister, who's 6 years older than me. And her mother died when she was 6. And, I say this because I was so angry with her for many, many years. But then as I got older, I realized, she came from a pretty tough background herself, and she didn't have parents really. She raised herself mostly. And so she used a lot of really old school tactics, yelling, screaming, hitting. And my sister, she is just that child. My boy reminds me of her. He's 15 now. And it's just like, I would watch her do things and I'm like, what are you even doing? She's like let's just say reaching her hand in the cookie jar, and everyone's telling her no, and they're watching her and she's just doing it anyway. And then she'll just take a bite. Well, and so what do you do when a child will not listen to you? How do you parent a child like that? I took parenting classes, child psychologist, umpteen books, just to train myself. But my mom didn't know what to do, and she was 14, and so she ended up yelling and hitting. And by the time, I have vivid memories of her beating my sister because she wouldn't listen. And my mom also so I smoked pot with my sister, who was smoking pot with my mom. And my sister at that time she was 11. And, my mom was partying with her, doing all kinds of stuff. And so at 12, I started to, talk back, and I wanted to rebel, and it's in my blood. I do not like to follow rules. I do the right thing. I do the right thing, but rules sometimes just don't make sense, you know? I'm
Okay.
like they just don't make sense sometimes. But when you do the right thing, they mostly align. Other times, you know, I'm like, why would I even, you know? Anyway, and then it saved me though because I left home early, and I'll get to that. I did rebel against all of this stuff. So she was starting to, she would have hurt me. She would have beat me just like my sister because I started not to listen. I started to wear mascara when I wasn't, you know, I wasn't supposed to, and talking back. And, you know, she started to do this thing. And I was like, there's no way. So God put me on this earth to help people that have had trauma and crisis in their life, victims, if you will. I believe we come into this journey on purpose. So you could use victim, the word victim or not. I don't believe any of my things that I've gone through, I was the victim. And I'm here to fight. So when she started to do that, you know, I told her, no, it's not going to happen. And this energy just came up in me, like no other. Like when my dad, did I already mention, you know, at 11, my dad, yes.
You mentioned it,
So,
but I definitely want to understand how you got out of it, like how it didn't
so
happen.
I fought him off, but I fought him with love. So everything, I'm an intuitive life coach. We didn't say that. And everything that I do is based on unconditional love that I believe God is. And I believe you can, you know, everybody has their beliefs, and there are certain religions, but I believe that there is an energy within us, around us, why we are us. And I believe that it's based on pure unconditional love. Love says no, and love has boundaries. Um, my dad and I were super close. We were really close when I was little. There was three of us, and anything that I wanted, you know, they would be like, just ask Teresa. Like we go on road trips and we'd be like, well, where do you guys want to stop to eat? And they'd be like, just, you know, ask her because that's where he's going to go, you know, and it was true. We were really close. I mean, it was like I was daddy's little girl.
Mm.
And, you know, we had a lot of problems, you know, we still had a lot of problems, but, I mean, I was also blessed with intuition. I remember my dreams every night. There's a lot that we can go into as well. And I've always been able to connect with people and see things with people and know things. And I knew the timing. You know, I was like, I'd watch my sister going, "What are you doing?" And then I would also watch my parents and know when I should hug or when I shouldn't hug or when I should say something or when I shouldn't say anything, you know. But my dad and I were like, we were super close. And I got along really well with my mom as well. They gave me the most love.
Wow. You have a younger brother?
He was older,
Okay. So your sister and then a brother and then you.
and then me.
Okay.
And, you know, looking at it, I was born on 7/7/77. I was
Holy
born with
cow.
all black hair and a gray patch here, gray and blonde, Mexican Catholic. And so everybody in the family was like, she was born for a special reason. And there's something, you know, but just having that said to you, right? And then getting the most love from your parents. And, it, you know, it's still like talking about it makes me want to choke up a little bit just because it's the truth. Um, but my dad, things changed, and around, I'd say around 11, 10-ish, we moved a lot. I guess it's probably about 10-ish. Things started to change a little bit. I started to change hormonally pre-teen, and then about 11, I was definitely in that, and that's when he tried. So he came into our room, my room, drunk, and my sister was in there, and she was pregnant at this time. She was pregnant at 17 with her first, and she was sitting on the floor. It was summer, and this is in one of the books that I'm writing, by the way, and I have her permission to tell her story as well. Multiple times we talk about it periodically. I get her permission again over the years. Hey, is this still okay? Um, and I mean, it was, you know, summer, it was hot. We lived in Southern California, and we had a swamp cooler, and it was, those things are terrible. If you've ever had a swamp cooler, if you don't start it
Mm.
in the morning, it's terrible. And then even as the day goes on, because in Riverside and Inland Empire, it got really hot down there. And I remember just being, you know, hot and muggy and watching TV late at night. I used to watch The Honeymooners and, a little black and white TV reruns of I Love Lucy. And my dad comes in, I have the fan blowing at my face, and he comes in, stands at the door. My sister and I immediately knew something was wrong. We just immediately were like, okay, we both look at each other. We both just kind of, and we were trained, you come from a blanket of abuse, you get into pattern, shoulders get tense. Everybody just kind of, like, what do we do next? Just pretend everything's okay. And we both thought that he was going to end up hurting her or doing something to her. Like, she's just, and if you follow human design, she's a 5-1. So if anybody knows out there, human design, 5-1s and 5s, they, you guys are there here for leadership, but you have a tough road and you have that projection screen. She's a 5-1, and we thought that he was going to maybe start to hurt her or something, because he had already in the past. He used to call her donkey. She's stupid. Just ask your brother and your sister what to do. The younger brother and sister, they're going to know. They're going to know your homework more than you. I don't even know why you try, type of things. I mean, it's, it was straight from a movie, and this is in the 70s and the 80s. She was born in 71. And so he comes in, we both knew something was wrong, and she left. We both thought, maybe he was going to start up with her. We didn't know. So I just, continued to watch TV, and I just and nothing. I didn't think anything really of it, just that something was wrong. So she got up and she left to her room. And that's when he started to, he sat on my bed and he started to grope me and he started to kiss on me. And I was like, at first I was in shock, Jen. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what is going on? I like, and then I got mad. I got really mad. I got so angry. I was like, what are you doing? Like, I can't even believe you're doing this. Like, what? And so I pushed him off. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, and I mean, I was like, I can't convey the energy that I brought up within me was like a fire. And if anybody knows human design or astrology, I do astrology as well. I'm an astrologer, and I have a grand trine in fire. And when I get worked up, I become this big, hairy, snaggle-toothed man, 6-foot man. And they're like, I'm not here to be a victim. And I just brought all of that energy out, and I was like, what are you doing? And it shocked him. I think it shocked him. And then he looked at me, and I believe love came in. It was God that came in. It was that energy, and he was like, I didn't do anything. I didn't do it. And I just kept pushing him and pushing him. I mean, I was 11, he's a big, strong man, and I was an 11-year-old little girl. I'm still not a big person, I'm not weak, but men usually have more power than women. And I just pushed him out of the room. I didn't do anything. And then my sister came in a little bit later, and she knocked on the door, and I was in shock, crying, and she was like, what happened? And I told her. She woke my mom up. My mom came in and didn't believe me.
That's the way.
Yeah. So, but I believe that she was scared, whether she believed me or not. But it was probably hard for her to believe because of our relationship. We hadn't had a close relationship, I'd say, for probably like 2 years-ish, after I started developing a little bit more and becoming, a tween. And, but she was scared, I'm sure. No education, no money, no job, what am I supposed to do? So she saved up money, racked up all the credit card bills, and we left a year later. And then that's when, the stress happened. That's when I started to talk back. That's when she started to try to push me and poke at me. And I was like, no, you're not going to do this to me.
You started smoking pot at 5. So 6 years of smoking pot. Were there any other drugs in that time?
So the first time I ever did it was 5, and I stopped because I did it multiple times with my sister and the friends. And then one day I actually felt it, and I was like, oh my, I was scared. I was really scared. And I just felt so different that I didn't do it for another 7 until I was about 12, until
Okay.
my mom got remarried. Well, moved in with the boyfriend, and he is a functioning pot smoking, pot smoker. Um, and so here's a little twist. My mom was going to start to hurt me, and I said no. And then I kept rebelling, snuck out one day, and I always rode the line. I never really got into true big trouble, but I rode the line. And I snuck out this one time and I got caught, and that's when she was going to really hurt me. She brought the belt out and she would hurt really badly with the belt.
Yep.
I mean, it was, I have vivid memories of things that happened to my sister. And I called my dad and I asked him to move back into his house. And I knew, Jen, in my heart that I was going to be safe. I knew it. I knew that I knew he never was going to do anything again. And he never did. But that's, so I did end up moving back into his house. And then I started spiraling downhill. He didn't parent me. He didn't know how to parent me. I'm sure he was in that mindset and position. Like, how am I supposed to say anything after something that happened? That's been, we didn't talk about it. I actually apologized to him. I didn't mention that. I apologized to him after my mom didn't believe me. And I thought, it's my fault and I'll just say I'm sorry. And then the family will go back to being, better and regular like we were. And it'll, this is my fault for even saying anything. So I apologized to him. But so we just swept it under the carpet, just like my family has had done for, I'd say, probably many generations. Definitely in, my grandfather raped some of my cousins, and I don't know about my aunts. Nobody talked about it. But that's why, when they said, when I was born 7777 and I was born for a special reason, they didn't
Yeah.
know I was going to be an advocate.
Mm.
And so some of my family had, shunned me and given me strong words, and were very angry about my openness. But the others have thanked me
Yep.
and have been so grateful, and I'm still close to them. But I don't believe in letting this kind of thing happen ever. So yes, I did try that drug for the first time. I didn't do it for a long time. And then I started smoking around 12. And then when I moved in with my mom and her boyfriend, she met him about a year after my parents were separated. He was a chronic pot smoker. And I started smoking pot around that time. And then I just spiraled, moved in with my dad, started to discover acid and mushrooms and drinking and meth and coke at one time. Yeah, lots of different things. And I just struggled with depression. I struggled with self-worth. I hardly went to school at one point. I mean, it was pretty tough. And then that's when my brother was on meth, and he had some idea, I guess you would say, an idea that we were going to have a romantic relationship. And he tried multiple times to touch me when I didn't expect it. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And I got out of that. I mean, the first time I was asleep, I fell asleep on the living room floor watching TV. And I woke up to him caressing me, and my breasts, my back, my body. And I just stood up and I got scared and I ran to my room and locked the door. And it happened a couple times more. I don't want to exaggerate, so I'll just say a couple more times.
Okay.
Before, like, I forgot, I let my guard down and forgot to lock the door. And it was in my room. And I remember the last time I was so angry. I got up, I was scared. I went to the bathroom and I was scared. And then I got angry and I went to his door after that, after composing myself, and said, "Don't ever do this again." And I'm sure I said something like, "I'm going to kill you if you ever try to touch me again." I was 14 at that time and he was 17. And he was deep into meth. He was pretty messed up.
And you were on that path also at this
I
point. I
was.
mean, you were using meth
Yeah.
with him, you said,
Yeah.
um, bouncing around. I mean, quite a story. Take us to when you mentioned earlier that you left when you were young. So, and that saved your life probably.
It sure
Sho
did.
because you're not in a good
Yeah.
place at all
No.
in lots of
So
ways.
yeah. Yeah. So this is when it changed. Just after that, I ended up trying coke for the first time, cocaine, and I hated it. And I slept with a guy I didn't even know. And I'm pretty conservative. I mean, like, I think that sex is the most wonderful thing about being a human being. I really do. It's amazing. But I was never that girl,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know what I mean? I've always been a little more conservative, and the bedroom is different, with a partner. But I was never like that. And I ended up sleeping with some guy, and I couldn't believe it. I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, something's wrong. This is not okay. I told my sister. She told my mom, who had moved to Tahoe.
Okay.
And I said I wanted to move to Tahoe. And then so everyone, got on board and said, okay, you're moving away. And so, I mean, I moved to Tahoe. I actually changed my mind for a moment. I'm like, no, I don't want to go, you know.
Yeah.
But they said, my dad was like, no, you already, said you need to go. I didn't tell him the details. I told my sister. She told everybody else. We were terrible at communication, right? So everybody knew all of the business, but nobody actually talked about it. And so I ended up leaving and moving to Tahoe, and it changed my life. And I stayed with my mom and my stepdad for, I would say, a handful of months before old patterns started to come in again. We got along just fine, and then my brother moved up, and I confronted him, and my mom knew what happened. I didn't know that she knew. She had asked me if it was okay if he moved up there, and thinking that he didn't know. And then also, I have a heart where I am here to help people. And in my mind, I was like, sure, if it's going to help him, I felt like I needed to give him that space. Like it was my obligation.
Mm,
Looking back, and now I know love has boundaries and love says no. So,
mhm.
as a 40, almost 7-year old, I'd have a different, opinion, and I'd have a different dialogue. But then, I didn't know she knew. So he moved up, I confronted him, and my mom, wasn't going to have us fighting in the house. She was very upset. She didn't say anything to me that she knew what happened, but she told us, I'm not going to have this in my house. And so I announced I was going to move out, and 2 days later, I had a place. I didn't even know where I was going to go. I didn't know where I was going to go. And I moved in with a girlfriend. Her father owned a house on the West Shore in Tahoe, and it changed my life. I ended up making up the credits that I needed to graduate high school. I had
Okay,
a
that was a
job
question I
at a
had.
Yep, job at a local doctor's office, where the women there, 2 in particular, just took me under their wing. Really, one. They were both wonderful women, and one of them, who I'm still friends with now, she's an amazing human being. Always made sure I had lunch. Was always trying to mother hen me. I wouldn't let her, only to a certain point, because I was still, rebellious, and I wanted to do what I want to do,
Mhm.
because I was still smoking pot. But I thought it was fine because I was doing my homework. I was working. I was paying my bills. My friend's dad, my girlfriend's dad at that time, didn't charge me rent for like 6 months until I could save up some money, and he knew my situation. And but yeah, I mean, it was, on graduation day, walking across that platform with that diploma in my hand felt really good. It felt really good.
I bet. I mean, because you had to do this through so many other factors going on that would make it tremendously difficult to graduate. You mentioned earlier that when you like, now, yes, we all understand why you wouldn't want to be a parent, why you didn't even want to go there, and why you were worried you'd mess your kids up and stuff. You hit a point though at about 29 that you really wanted to have kids. So sometime between 16 and graduation and 29, there had to have been a lot of changes in there. I'd love to know if you could kind of condense, like, when did you stop using drugs? What was that like? and then wanting to have kids and that process for you?
So, after high school graduation, I traveled a bunch, worked at a fun resort out in the middle of the ocean, island called Saipan. Drugs, drinking, so much fun. It was like a Club Med type of resort, lifeguard, entertainment, dancing, awesome things at night and other things. Came home to Tahoe. I consider Tahoe as my home, and I point this way because Mount Rose is over there. And I got a great job at a fire department. I'd always been. I'm really great with office work. When I was working at that doctor's office, I was just a file clerk, but I ended up, doing much more than just filing and answering the phone calls and doing all of those things organized. And so I got a job as the administrative assistant for the fire department. And I had to be clean then, so I cleaned
Okay.
up. I cleaned up enough, to be honest. And once I met my husband, my current husband now, we are going through a divorce. There's story there, but it's all a healing journey, and I'm so grateful for everything that has happened and is happening in my life. Once I met him, I cleaned up pretty fast, actually. He was he's former military, retired military, and he didn't. I had told him, I still, and at that point, I was just drinking with friends and smoking pot. Later after working for a little while and getting back into old pattern. And he was fine with it. And but once we really got together, once we moved in together, I just stopped it all, and I stopped
Mm.
hanging out with my mom and my stepdad, who actually I would smoke a lot of pot with them and I would drink with them. Every Sunday I would go to their house and I would do my laundry, and that's when we would party. Yeah. And I know, Jen, a lot of parents. I had friends who had parents like my parents. It was a regular occurring thing. Yeah, it wasn't abnormal. Mhm.
Which is, well, I
Right.
think here's the thing though, in that, of course you had your parents had friends and they did the same thing. And so you grow up thinking it's normal because we find people that do the same things as us. It doesn't matter if it's running or
Sure,
smoking weed or
sure,
whatever.
sure.
Once
Going
you
to
start
church.
having those,
Yeah,
right, going to church, that's another
yeah,
great one. Like your friends become the people
yeah.
who you do those things with. So
It's
that
true.
makes total sense to me. It's not
Yeah,
even weird, even though my first reaction's like, "Real really?" But
right,
yeah, of course,
right.
dating, everything. Although you were dating somebody who was not the same as
No,
that dynamic. So I'm guessing, yeah,
yeah.
you'd want it to change.
I even though he never asked me to, it just felt right.
Mm,
It just felt like the thing, and I had been done. I was really just tired of, being tired, and my lungs hurt, and my skin was, I wasn't as clear as it could have been. I wasn't as focused. I wasn't as motivated. And I just felt right. It was time. And so that's when, and we waited 4 years to have children. And I did circle back to old pattern, and I'll tell you too. I know that we're also watching time.
mhm.
I appreciate you having me on. I definitely do. It's awesome.
Me too.
Um, so we waited 4 years to have kids because I wasn't sure, and I had told him, I'm not sure, and he knew. I told him about my background, and he said, "Okay, that's fine," and I said, "But if you do want kids, are you okay with stay-at-home mom?" And four children and stay-at-home mom, and he said yes, and so I was like, "Okay." But yeah, it was a wonderful whirlwind romance. I mean, he swept me off my feet. I had never been in love with anybody like I fell in love with him at that time.
Mhm.
I mean, it was incredible. It was like, how do you explain it? Just want to stand at the top of a mountain and announce, I'm
Right.
in love. It was amazing. And so we waited 4 years.
Okay.
I got pregnant before the 4-year time, but we had our first at 4 years. It was, scary and wonderful and beautiful. And like I said, I couldn't even help myself. I mean, at a certain point, I was like, I was just like hormonal animal, like, we must. This is such a good idea. Like, even if he would have tried to talk me out of it, I would have been like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, let me just seduce you because this is a great idea. Fast forward 15 years, I'm like, whose idea was this? Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
you did though, you got pregnant. Tell me about the kids that you have and how far apart they were, and then also what parenting was like, because you went from not wanting to do it for legitimately terrifying reasons to really wanting to do it with someone that you were very in love with, and you felt supported right at that point. But
Hmm.
then parenting can it cannot be what we think it's going to be like.
Not at all. I mean,
Like,
it is
not usually.
not at all. And kids, I mean, it's like a crapshoot, they're their own unique individuals. Yes, there's
Yeah.
epigenetics. Our DNA is there, they come from our DNA. So I do believe that our DNA has information, not just our looks that they carry, but also our memories with, epigenetics, if you're familiar with that. But I mean, yeah, so I mean, the parenting journey has been something else for sure. So we had our first, it was just fine. I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this so well. My child's going to listen to me. I'm going to create all these rules. I'm going to have such a structured, lovely home life. And we're going to eat dinner at the same time. We're going to, we're not going to watch TV because all we did at one point was watch TV. There was a TV in every room, and anyway, so yeah, that worked for the first number of years. For the first 3 years we were fine, and then we decided we were going to have another child. I miscarried actually as well.
Mm.
um, and to be totally transparent, I did have an abortion at 18. And I was with someone that I did fall in love with. It was the first man that actually showed me what love was. His family was incredible. They took me into their arms like I'd never known love before that family and before this man. I got pregnant and it wasn't the right time, and I can't even believe how hard parenting has been now. I had my
Mm.
child at 31. I'm not sure what kind of parent I would have been at 18.
Yeah.
I miscarried with when we did try to have our first, and then we got pregnant with our second, and he was full term. The first few years, we just did our thing, and in parenthood, and it was pretty awesome. And then we decided to have another one, and then I miscarried again, and we thought, let's just one is great, and then that whole thing boiled in me again. I'm like, I actually told him, I was like, this is the last time, we could have sex before I get pregnant. Because I had been keeping track of my ovulation schedule
Right.
for many years. I was like, when we decided to have a kid, I was, I just went all into research of what exactly I need to do to get pregnant. And so anyway, we ended up having Mila and our second child. And I had, I told him, this is the last time. And I actually thought that, but then after he left town because he traveled for work, I thought,
Mm.
it actually might be really great to be pregnant. And I just like, I guess you would say I prayed for it. It was more of an energy thing. And I wore his shirt afterwards. And I was just like, oh, it would be so nice to be pregnant. And I ended up carrying her full term, 3 years apart. And that's when the fit hit the shan.
Yeah.
That is when, yeah, our 3-year-old went wild.
Yeah.
Oh, he went wild. It was no joke. He got so angry at me one point. I had a newborn baby in my arms. I'm no sleep. Husband's travels, 3 out of 4 of the weeks of the month. And there's my mommy, I'm going to poop in your bed. Oh, he sure did. He ran over to my bed, pulled over the covers, jumped in there, pooped, pulled the covers over, pooped, and there was poop in my bed because that's my boy. I ride moguls. It's like riding moguls parenting. I've I'm certified in hypnosis, conversational hypnosis, and I use it anyway. So I hypnotize myself so that I would be in better shape as I parent after I've had children. I'm in the best shape of my life, and so the new I hypnotized the new one was have better skin as the teen years. I go through the teen years. Yeah, it's something else being a parent.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a
Yeah, it
wild
is.
ride. You had the 2, 3 years apart, and I mean, like, a lot of us have gone through that. Holy cow, I like, what happened? Where did this train derail, and how? And it's hard. I mean, I think parenting is hard, and it's hard for us at different times and different ways, and we never know how it's gonna be, and there's personalities and all that stuff. I know the kids now are 12 and 15. What things did, and you said your husband traveled, so it feels sometimes to some women, it feels like you have all these stretches of time that you single parent, which can be challenging too. So what did you do then to support yourself, and how has that carried through? Did it get better, and then teenagers are just unique and different, because I have them too. Um Kind of take me through the things that helped the most through parenting from that 3 and newborn to the 15, 12. Because I think that that's a great thing that you can share with people coming from your background, is what really bridged the gap for you to feel like you could parent well.
When I look back at it, when I was in it, it felt different. But when I look back, support.
Mm,
Support is really, and we come from a family where you don't ask for help. And then a lot of, and I've talked to a lot of other people from my ethnic background, Mexican, background, like you're not supposed to ask for help. You're not supposed to talk to anybody. You don't communicate. You just take care of it yourself. Or sometimes people will say, well, God will just take care of it.
mhm,
But we're here, we're on this human journey for a reason, and we are a community, it's something that we need. And so when the fit hit the shan with my 3-year-old, that's when I took parenting classes.
mhm,
The kids were in a school, a Montessori school that provided parenting classes free. And I talked to the teachers as well whenever I needed to, especially because this boy, my son, is a lot like my sister. And so, I used to be so angry with my parents. How could you treat her that way? How could you do those things? And then I realized so much later, and it's so difficult, but I am definitely different. But I've had old pattern as well come up where I'm like, man, and things I didn't even remember he's brought up. I'm like, whoa, no wonder you're mad at me right now. Like I've done everything to change. And I'm definitely was not like them, but it's interesting, and then perspective. So the support, having the parenting classes, the teachers to talk to, I made friends with other parents in the school community. So
mhm.
being able to hang out with those people, show me your friends, I'll show you who you are. So
Yeah.
being in that environment, it was really helpful to have supportive parents. And then also husbands traveled. It was a private school, and so a lot of the husbands were traveling. I'll never consider myself a single mother because I've known single mothers. My sister was a single mother. I
Mhm, mhm.
did do it alone mostly, but I wasn't on my own completely.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, and still, it's tough. It just is what it is. And then I also saw a child psychologist. I'm like, how do I parent this kid? Like, it's frowned upon that you grab your child and throw them against the wall. People don't like that. People do not.
So
And it's
you
not a
can't
good.
kennel train them? I'm trying, just to be clear.
Right, just to be clear,
Yeah, just to be clear, this is not okay? Yeah.
with all of that, videos, and I mean, I read, it was like 10 books in 7 days, something like, I'm not gonna, I won't exaggerate. I read, I mean, it was something like that where I just read and read, like, how do I do this thing? I have to be different. If there's anything in this world I want to be known for, it is to be a great parent. Nobody is perfect. I have other things going on, books that I'm doing, coaching that I'm doing, astrology, helpful, meditation, all of these things, friendships. This is the one thing that I know that I'm here to do.
Yeah.
And the chain is broken with me, and I want to stop that so my kids can do something different. You know, they have a way better life, and I want them to be able to give grandchildren and their children and their children, however that, you know, if they decide to have kids, which I'm thinking, you know, I have a kind of a feeling they're going to end up, but we'll see, having
Yeah.
kids.
We
So,
could talk about a ton all day, like forever, because there's so much that we haven't gone into in your story. I do, though, want to talk about your business. So I think that's kind of how we'll wrap up. I don't know when you started or what started when, but you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and at some point you launched this business.
mhm. So, the reason, for those of you who can see, I have all gray hair, well, mostly all gray, but my hair is gray now and white. And Mexican Catholic, it was all black when I was born, you know, dark brown. And my mother got sick in 2016 with cancer.
Mm.
And we grew up with the peanut butter that you had to stir, the carob. You know, our Easter basket was embarrassing. I was so embarrassed. It had apples, oranges, you know, the Peeps were like the most sugary thing. I was like, really? Everybody else had all these great, you know, Easter baskets. And I was like, ours suck. Are you kidding? Chocolate covered raisins? What is that all about? So we thought that I, in particular, thought she was going to go the natural route. And she didn't. My brother committed suicide a month before she was diagnosed with cancer
Oh
in
my
2016,
gosh.
February 2nd of 2016. And then she was diagnosed March 2nd of 2016. And that's when I was going to school at UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, majoring in psychology. I was going to move on to neuroscience. And she gave me the news. And shortly after that, I stopped what I was doing there. I dropped out and decided to dive into alternative methods to heal cancer. I figured she was going to, you know, go the, like I said, repeatedly, the alternative route, but she decided not to. And looking back at it, she never wanted to live.
Oh.
You know, she didn't want to survive. She did it for us. Her husband, who was her boyfriend at that time. They've been together 28 years. She tried because we told her, you know, we pleaded with her. And
Mm.
but in the beginning, she said, you know, I have cancer and I don't want to do anything, and I just want to, you know, let it be, and I'll just die. And so I dove into all the alternative methods, and I treated myself as a cancer patient. I stopped dyeing my hair. I started, you know, I went through all kinds of different gluten-free and paleo and keto and, you know, all kinds of different detoxes and coffee enemas. And I mean, you name it, I did it. Truth About Cancer, I dove into their material, Ty and Charlene Bollinger, plethora of material. If that ever happens to me, cancer, or anyone who's willing to listen, please go to the Truth About Cancer. There's so many options. People that had stage 4 pancreatic cancer have survived. But looking back, my mom, she wanted to pass away. It was a struggle. So a year and a half, I got into health coaching at that time. A friend of mine basically
God.
clobbered me. She clobbered me to coach her. And I was like, I'm not ready. This is what I want to do. And she's like, T, because some of my friends call me T, and just do it. And I said, okay, let's go ahead and do it. And then I moved on from there, doing Bob Proctor was my mentor for a couple of years, I believe it was. And I did Proctor, I facilitated his coaching. And then I moved on to my own intuitive life coaching, where I use astrology, mind energy work, a meditation that I've developed, taken from 20 years of experience from different modalities and other practices, and then my own um, special, you know, twist to it. And then also Myers-Briggs type indicator assessment, where I'm not doing much with that right now because I have so many projects going on, but I will. So stay tuned for that. But so that is why I do what I do. What really
Wow.
triggered going into being an intuitive life coach. And again, it was a client who, when I was facilitating for Bob Proctor, you know, I had another client in particular who said, I'm specifically going for your work, not for Bob Proctor's work. So that's when I started to do my own thing.
Teresa, we have all of the links in the show notes so people can find you. Is there an easier way for someone to reach out to you if they're more interested in your story or in your coaching?
Email at this
Okay.
point. I would say please check out my website first.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of story on there, and it's teresawalkerley.com. And it's Teresa, and Walkerley is spelled, excuse me, Walker with an Ley at the end. So Walkerley. You can get through, you can get to my email from there, or you can email me at twalkerley.com. Excuse me, twalkerley@gmail.com. And that again is T as in Teresa, WALKERLEY@gmail.com. And like I said, the website will have a lot more information. And then if you decide after that you do want to get a hold of me, then send me an email and I'll be happy to have a conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. This could have been a 3 series just to talk about everything in your life that you've gone through, but thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, there's so much to talk about. I'd be happy to come again. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everyone, for listening.